France made a move that pretty much shocked the entire world. Over 129 tons of gold were moved from a bank in New York all the way to the Central Bank of France in Paris. Now, I'm going to tell you why this actually matters, because France isn't the only one doing this here. Central banks all across the world have been doing this for a while now. And this is something that economists have termed de-dollarization. And when you look at the data, we can see that the demand for gold has rapidly increased in the last couple of years. And this chart dated all the way to 2024 shows that in 2020, we had a sudden jump, double or even nearly triple for the demand for gold. And in 2025, moving into 2026, we are seeing this demand at elevated levels that the world hasn't seen in the last couple of decades. Now, how does all of this even connect? What most people don't realize is countries don't just hold cash. They tend to hold something called reserve. And this reserve is either in the US dollar, government bonds, or in gold. And when they hold the US dollar, they don't just sit on a pile of cash. No, they reinvest all of that money back into the US economy in the form of something called US Treasury bond. Why? Because it's safe, liquid, and they earn interest off of this investment over a period of time. And because of this, the US can borrow money cheaply. And there is a global demand for the US debt. So the US remains dominant, and basically the world funds the US economy. And this is where everything starts to change, because gold isn't tied to a specific nation. And when countries decide to pick and invest in gold, they are picking independence over the current system. And why do I say this? Before, countries have to hold the US dollar, invested it back into the US economy in the forms of US Treasury bonds, and basically fund the US. But right now, they are slowly reducing reliance on the US dollar and increasing allocation to gold. And central banks all across the world don't have infinite capital. So when they are buying gold, they have to reduce something else on their balance sheet. And often, that is the US debt. So this causes a lesser demand for US bond, which as a result causes an increase in US yield. And what most people don't realize is, for every percentage fraction increase of US yield, these are billions of dollars on the interest that America has to pay over the 36 trillion debt. And the US has few options here, which is to either increase tax, print more money, or to cut spending. But what we have seen from history is that the US is always going to print more money, which as a result increases the US national debt. But none of these three options shed the light on what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to point out here is that there is pressure on the system. And this pressure is as a result from the allocation of nations' reserve from the US dollar and the US debt into gold.